Good morning, good afternoon, LinkedIn, YouTube, wherever you might be watching this or listening. Welcome to another edition of Let's Build HubSpot Websites with Anton. How you doing, man?
Doing great. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. Uh,
Awesome.
I was always excited for this series as soon
Yeah,
as we started talking about it, because
yeah,
somehow you pick out a favorite topic every week, and this week is maybe the most favorite, which is just building membership experiences, uh, personalized experiences, private content experiences, no matter which way you slice it. I think it's been exciting to watch HubSpot over the past couple years start to make this just unbelievably accessible um, to any business. It's one of the it's like a differentiator, like one of the clear differentiators of the platform as a whole. Filling a gap where, in general, the stuff we're going to talk about today, um, you're either creating your own like internal network or something like fairly clunky that maybe they can access some links to some files or uh, some spreadsheet that somebody is maintaining behind the scenes so that they stay up to date. Or in most cases, we're just sending emails back and forth to provide status updates. Or you've had these grand like customer experience platforms or portal platforms where like experiences that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to set up
yeah,
and a long time, lots of hours, lots of manpower to not only build but maintain. And I'll say what we're going to talk about today is very much not that. And it's a value that a lot of people have access to already and may not know it. But yeah, HubSpot memberships.
yeah,
You said you've gotten it's come up in the past few weeks. There seems to be an uptick in interest.
yeah,
So tell me about that.
yeah. So, memberships or membership areas, for those who don't know that, they are available in the pro or professional tier and also in the enterprise, obviously. And this feature is, uh, it's huge. You can't uh, press it down to a few sentences because there are almost endless possibilities you can do with them, right? So basically, you could say, if you're not familiar with that, it's a different way of gated content. So, or gated information, not only content, because mm, the most basic example would be like, hey, we have some sort of, let's call it, list, and we want to provide special content only to this list, right? So for instance, a super special in-depth uh, blog or knowledge base, some sort, right? And this can be done with memberships. So you create technically a login function, which is also pre-made in HubSpot. And then you just provide, or you set up, if we stay with this example, you set up a blog, and then you also have several options how to gate this blog. But most commonly, if you want to provide access only to this list, it's possible. So basically, um, yeah, you can create gated information or even whole dashboards. Like And this is something that I had requests recently, which is not that common. So this is why I'm starting to see a transition in this field. Mm, because the companies which reached out were like, hey, we want to provide a feature to our users or to our customers so they can interact with their customers. So it's a multi-level um, membership, I would say. And it can be super easy from, hey, again, we want to provide special content only to those people or their customers, up to, hey, we want to have a special sales dashboard per user where he can see all his numbers from all his um, clients, right? So it's extremely versatile. And with the CRM and memberships, you can build that. And if you have enterprise, you can also throw custom objects into that, serverless functions, all the good stuff that enterprise have or has. And then you can build really interactive uh, and more valuable websites, or a more or a better website experience or more valuable experience for your customers, visitors, users, whatever you want to call them. And everything in HubSpot. And the only thing you need is like the whole idea and a developer who can create or bring your idea to life, because most times membership areas, if they're starting to go really really deep, they require a developer. But for an easy example, like, hey, again, let's use the blog. Like, hey, we have a special blog only for our users. Basically, you could set up a page, limit it to, or limit the access only to one list or several lists, and that's it, right? Mm, if we are talking about data, yeah, you will most likely need a developer, but the good thing is all the data is already available in HubSpot, right? So
Yeah,
no need
I think that's
for,
like
yeah,
one
like
of the
no need
keys.
for reinventing the wheel.
Yeah, exactly. Or remaintaining the wheel in this case,
Yeah,
because most of the build outs I've seen, and these are build outs like 150, $200,000, like 600
yeah,
hours of work. Got to build this in AWS. Got to build a separate, platform altogether for people to log into.
yeah.
And because it's really like hard to believe it if you haven't seen it in action yet. But just imagine if all this build out, right, all that functionality, like is basically now in HubSpot CMS pages.
Yeah.
And that experience gets maintained simply by maintaining the CRM data, right? In those cases. And since you're already should be maintaining that anyways, now you don't have to go into a separate system or even hire a separate team or person to now make sure that's maintained. And when you talk about the interactivity and that kind of stuff that you can create on these pages, now you can get help from the customers to maintain the
Mhm.
data and
Yeah.
build their own experiences. And this is where we think about things like It's easy to get like kind of locked in on one part of the customer journey, but just imagine if you like, especially in the conversation of to gate or not to gate, right? And how much value are they getting and why would they give you that email? Just imagine if the moment they give you the email, for whatever reason, they have a portal, they have a membership area,
Yeah.
and that resource, that thing that they got access to, now instead of trying to find it in the email or trying to find it, by asking the person for it again,
Yeah.
they have a place to go back to, and it might be one resource, right? But now, as they engage with you, we can put quotes and proposals there.
Yeah.
We can put orders there. We can put invoices and payment history there. Like
Mm.
all these objects. That's what gets me excited about the overall data model. Not
Yeah.
only are we building a better customer data model inside of HubSpot right now, the more
But
complete
also an
that is,
experience.
right? The more complete
Yeah.
that is, the more you can serve the entire experience up
Hmm.
to a customer on a HubSpot web page.
Yeah.
And it's really not to be underestimated how impactful that is, right? And obviously, I could talk about this for a week straight, probably. But
Yep.
you've got some pretty clear,
Yeah.
diagrams. I'd love for you to, take us through to
Yeah.
really paint this picture for people.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we are talking about dashboards, right? Because a membership area most likely starts with some sort of dashboard. Mm, it's, I would say, looks something like this. Very basic. I mean, no colors, no information, just a super simple wireframe here. And basically, you have your website header here, and then maybe some boxes with some sort of information like, hey, uh, as you've mentioned, invoices and quotes, like, hey, you could basically display a status of your quote here and tell the user who's logged in, like, hey, you haven't paid, or the payment is overdue. Could be done, right? Like there are so many options here, and I would say that only your imagination is um yeah, the end of what is possible. And
And also, like,
yeah.
the imagination of your team and your customers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not
Yeah,
hard. It's
exactly.
actually very easy to go look at the emails and
Yeah.
ask, what are people asking for? They're asking for tracking information. They're asking for
Mm-hmm.
the last invoice. They're asking for the
Yeah.
last time they paid. They're asking for order status. They're
Yeah.
re-asking for the manual, all these resources we've given them the whole way, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what goes in these places, right?
Yeah.
And it's not
And
dissimilar from why we keep coming back to it, the Amazon
mm,
experience. Like
exactly.
when you go, like almost all of that data, like now can be tracked to a native object in HubSpot, like invoice numbers, previous payments, orders, that kind of stuff. That's
Yeah.
why that stuff exists in HubSpot now. That's what people expect to be able to see um,
Yeah.
when they when they are managing their relationship with your business, right? It doesn't have to be all on you and all on your team, right? They want to have a
Yeah.
hand in this too. And if you give them the visibility to do that, they will gladly do it.
And also, it will make your life easier because instead of receiving an email like, hey, could you resend me the quote or invoice, right? You could just um, provide an FAQ on your website somewhere with, hey, if you want to get all of your invoice history, log in, right? Super simple. And therefore also automating some processes. But if we take a look further on the layout, right? So most websites have their header on top because this is something that is, I would say, learned, right? But if we are speaking about dashboards, there's another thing. And in this example, the whole navigation is on the left, right? And this is something that I would call best practice in some ways, mm, simply because it's not that important as the whole content, right? And in most apps, whatever you use, like Gmail, I mean, I use ClickUp for time tracking or project management. You always have a sidebar and you can minimize it or collapse it to the side. This is done because, I mean, HubSpot has its own sidebar. If you have worked with HubSpot in the last couple of months since the navigation update, um, it was moved from top to left because it's important, but not as important as the actual data, right? And if you just imagine, like, the dashboard can be more than one scroll, then the navigation would overlap um, some of your data, right? And you have to scroll back and forth to find the best thing if you want to take a screenshot, for instance. And you can all solve this with the sidebar navigation because then you always, or then the navigation won't overlap the content, which is more important in a dashboard. And how a dashboard could look like, right? So super simple example I've just created is something like this, right? So super simple dashboard. I just used the developer hug branding. And for instance, you can create a super valuable experience by just putting in the headline like, "Hi, first name, welcome to your portal." Right? So this is a super simple personalization, but it will give the user some sort of feeling like, "Hey, it's personalized to me." Right? And then just a few examples what you can put into a membership portal, dashboard, whatever you want to call it, is something like, hey, you are registered since, because this is a property that already exists in HubSpot, right? Mm, then the points, I mean, it's some sort of gamification because gamification can be a huge thing. Uh, and also, if this is also important to your requirements, something like, hey, your contact, like, who is the person responsible for me at the company which created the dashboard? Super simple. I mean, you can put in phone number, fax, if somebody uses this thing, but you get the idea, right? And as we, or as I gave the example of a blog previously, this is how a blog listing in a dashboard could look like. You don't need the beautifully designed block cards that are utilized in your default blog on your listing page, because a dashboard is all about information. So you can put in the featured image, but most likely you don't need it. And then just an example, like, hey, those are resources for you, like actual downloads that are stored in HubSpot or anywhere else. I mean, you don't need to host them on HubSpot, but it will be easier to host them in HubSpot and have everything in one place. And you could replace this with invoices, quotes, uh, basically anything you like. And here, just three things or three navigation points that I think are super great, like special knowledge um, nav point or item, if this is relevant to you. Provide them. You can basically build your own learning management system in HubSpot. And I know people that have done that. And also, something you can think about, and this is the Amazon approach, I would say, or basically like every app does now. So, since I have not created that somewhat on purpose, is like, hey, let's create an image here and call it profile, right? And what this does is a user um, can simply, or you can provide HubSpot forms, native HubSpot forms, that a user can fill out and therefore enrich all of your data. But maybe he won't think of it like, hey, I have to fill out a form for, or why does this company requires my company name, my company phone number, my company XYZ, what shoe size I have, right? But if it's in your profile, it, I think, could be easier to get all the data. So, yeah,
Yeah, I think that's a great point because it's
yeah,
just the ability. uh, if you can bring that back up, um,
yeah,
it's
one
about
second.
control, right? Like
Yeah,
if you are trying to like get this information from them in an
yeah,
outbound way, like especially
hmm,
here, like you mentioned the first name, right?
yeah,
This is so different from just getting first name in email subject line, right? Because just the concept of like you've created a space for
yeah,
me to come whenever I want to do stuff that I want to do. And that first name there means like it's up to me that I'm coming to this space, and the fact that you recognize I'm in this space, that
hmm,
there's a huge like impact in terms of relationship and making sure I'm in the right place, like versus just getting all these messages via email. And same thing goes with the forums, like you mentioned. Like I'm in this space. It's not about conversion at all. Like it's about the experience and their control over it. Which that's the reason you don't need, you know, big pretty blog thumbnails, right? This
Yeah.
is a repository, making it easy to access the data that they already expect to be there, right? They should not be surprised very often by new
Yeah.
things, which is the reason like you try to create all these clickbaity things related to, trying to get somebody to click on a post. So that's while it might look prettier, right, in the portal, you probably don't need it because they already know what it is and they've
Mm.
saved it for later or they want to be able to reference it later.
Yeah.
So just starting with a very like function based mindset of can we get the information there, right? And that's why I love the question, or if you can have the conversation with the client, or somebody trying to improve the experience, like, do they ever need to see this? Like, would they ever be interested in seeing this themselves? If so, and we can get the data into HubSpot, now we can put it on a web page for them to see
Mm.
wherever it is,
Yeah.
right? So simply making this space for the data in HubSpot now makes it easy to communicate asynchronously,
Mm-hmm.
with the customer through a login, private
Yeah.
content membership area.
Yeah.
So where do you start when take us through like when somebody reaches out to you and says, I want a private content area, I want a memberships area. What kind of questions are you asking?
Uh, so most commonly I'm asking like why? Like why do you want to have that? What is the timeline? Because I mean, since memberships are so almost endless, right? You can build or extend a membership over years, right? And I mean, this is somewhat the growth-driven design approach, which I think most of the viewers heard of. And the thing is most likely never gonna be done because um, you have iteration A, B, C, and so on. And then at some point, the company who's requesting the dashboard might gonna be like, "Hey, we had an idea. We have this data. Can we put it in into the dashboard?" Right? So the first or one of the first questions would be, where do we want to start from? What type of data, information are we starting with? What are the potential um, evolutions of that, right? And what do you, mm, what are you looking for as a result? Because putting out a dashboard just to have a dashboard, or let's call it membership, I'm not sure if this is gonna be something that um, will be, let's say, very effective. So you have to know a purpose, or you have to develop some sort of purpose for this thing. And I mean, obviously, what is the price range we are talking about? Because I mean, such dashboards can easily, easily reach 50, 60, 80K. Uh, it depends on how much work it needs. I mean, sure, you've mentioned that earlier, but you can get to six figures even in HubSpot. But this won't be the typical membership area anymore. This has to be outlined because you can do so much stuff in HubSpot. You can start with an easy membership, which might cost you a few $100, maybe a few $1,000, but it can easily be done for 5, 6 figures, right? And
Yeah. And I think that's where
yeah,
uh like the complexity of
yeah,
like managing a complex user permissioning,
yeah,
structure if the customers at different level, different roles like managers versus users, they need to be able to see,
yeah.
different things and have different access. The more interactivity, the more
Mm-hmm.
experiential it gets, where they are
Yeah,
participating in everything that's happening. Like those are the things that, you know, um, the development costs come into play. But the cool thing is, we always come back to this: developing it in HubSpot, right, as opposed to the other systems, since it's so integrated with the CRM,
yeah,
it becomes way easier to maintain, right? And I think
yeah,
that's where you can focus on building out, better experiences
yeah,
in the growth-driven design, mindset.
yeah,
Because at the end of the day, this is not done because the buyer expectations change,
yeah.
right? And a classic example, and one thing I want to clarify before we wrap up, is that this is not the customer portal in HubSpot. This is not the customer portal that you get with Service Hub, right? And the reason it isn't, and the reason you want to do this in CMS is because almost every use case I've heard of, people will get access to the customer portal. They will see the tickets, and
Mm-hmm.
then they will apply all of the real world expectations related to portals, which is, oh, can I see invoices? Can I
Mm-hmm.
see anything else? Because that portal's designed for tickets only. It's a help desk like
Yeah,
use case design, right? But anything else you want to ask, like now you're using a different tool that's not designed for that thing. As soon as you move over to CMS and you say, hey, we want to be in a position to dynamically serve any content that might be in our HubSpot portal, or might be anywhere else. If it's just like we gotta, share a list of links, um, things like our YouTube channel or anything else, partners we might be working with. So
yeah,
like the ability to asynchronously serve um, this information at their control. Like they don't have to ask for it; they just log in, and that's something important to consider. If you've never done this, if your industry's never done this, if your customers have not explicitly asked for this, even though they're enjoying Amazon at home, they've never seen it like in their business life, there
yeah,
is some education you have to do to say, here is the portal, go get the information over and over and over. Because even though they can log in and see the tracking information now, they will ask you for it still via email. And uh, so there's some educating to do. And when you do it, that's when the emails and the calls start to go down. Um, but it's definitely not if you build it, they will come situation. Uh,
mm,
but that shouldn't scare anybody away, because at the end of the day, we all have these experiences in our personal lives. We understand the value, and again, like we say almost every week, you can do this now in a much more affordable,
yeah,
effective, efficient, easy way than you have ever been able to before. The decision is just, does your business, do you want to provide this kind of experience?
yeah.
If yes,
And
you
it's
can.
just a huge win for everybody, I would say.
Yeah. The amount
Yeah,
of communication, like knowing that lack of communication or misunderstood communication is at the root of so many problems, like internally and externally with experiences.
Yeah.
The ability to create places like this, and now with the ability to create CRM cards, and the amount of customization we can do to a CRM record, right? When you are interacting with a customer and you can see the information that they can see in their portal, and everybody knows they're looking at the same information, that cuts down on so many misunderstandings that happen throughout
Yeah.
the process, because we're not trying to, there's no question or no uncertainty about, oh, where did they get this data? When was the last time they looked? Are they looking at updated information? Um, that's some of my favorite, like, kind of like mirrored UX uh, design. So now your internal people, when we say setting up people for success to serve customers, that, man, that is a very powerful way, to be able to do that. Uh,
Definitely, yeah.
this is fun, man. As as always, uh,
Yeah.
got some good info here, um, and best of luck on setting up those private experiences. You know,
Thank
um,
you.
but I am seeing an uptick as well. Uh,
Yeah.
I think most of the battle is just being aware that you can do stuff like this in HubSpot,
Mm,
much easier, much faster than you think, and that you
yeah.
or than you've been able to, in the past. So if you've ever received one of those 150K, $200,000 proposals, uh, and said, okay, that's not for me right now. Can't handle
Mm,
that. Come on back, and we'll
yeah.
be happy to chat and see, and show like how easily it could
Yeah.
get done for you.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so
I mean, one last thing, since you've mentioned how fast it can be built in HubSpot. So one request I got was like, "Hey, can we build a membership area with a, a dashboard which has something like this that is currently um, displayed or shared in 30 days, right?" So tell me any software where this could be done in 30 days without an excessive amount of developers, which also increases your cost, right?
yeah,
So yeah,
and like not only not one of those 30 days will get you the bare minimum,
yeah,
and then you have to
it's
pay
just a
for
start.
everything that's developed after that,
Yeah.
right? It is a foundation, and
Mm-hmm.
usually done in a way where now you can build stuff too. And that's where the real value comes
Yeah.
in. Like, to the point where if you decide you want to see a new piece of information, like that member since date, that's a property on a
Yeah.
CRM record, right? And when I'll never forget last year or earlier this year when I was like figuring out all the different values or all the different reasons somebody might want to log into a portal like this, the concept of reordering came up, and the ability to go create a rich text property like that hadn't existed before, create a payment link, put it in there, and then add the field to the module, like, so no code anywhere. Within 5 minutes, I had the ability, somebody could log in to reorder an item, right? And this is where, of
Mm-hmm.
course, in that scenario, we don't need a full blown e-commerce experience. They don't need full cart, you know, um, functionality. They know exactly what they need to reorder. They can come in, log in, click the button, pay.
Yeah.
right? And that, without ever having done it before, just from idea to implemented was about 10 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't because I know how to code or I've done 1,000 e-commerce sites. It was I know how properties work and I know where I can put them on the page.
Yeah.
So I tried it and it worked. And there's so many things like that available to you in HubSpot right now. Um,
It's crazy.
so yeah, man,
Yeah.
it's exciting times, and I'm seeing more and more related to the back end or the back office stuff, right? Like
Hmm.
invoices and payments and of course, like there hasn't been great solutions, for
Yeah.
that for B2B specifically, and that's why I'm so excited for what's going on with Commerce Hub and the acquisition of cash flow and just the way that this stuff is going to work next year. Like people are not going to
Hmm.
recognize it, and for
Yeah.
for for great reasons. Like you're going to have a complete picture. You will have the ability to create a complete picture for both yourself and internal teams and the customer, uh, in in unmanageably easy ways, right? And we're here with this show to hopefully help you imagine, how that's possible and show you how it's possible. So I appreciate you showing us today, Anton.
You're welcome.
So if you're interested in this, in the concept of creating a self-service experience, a private content experience, however you want to slice it, um, you know, think about your process. Talk to your customer-facing teams about what might be valuable in a dashboard like this or in a portal. Find those opportunities and let's grow. Have a great day, everybody.
Have a great one.